Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Fresh Out, the podcast with 4 people today, because there's one more than usual, which is 3. 3 is usual. There's one more. I'm Jahan Anand, at Rock Fact. It's me.
It's me, Casualty, CDG. I'm the co-host of this podcast and every other podcast.
I am the professional media and movie mastermind, the Funhouse, Drew Bunhausen, and joining us, it's not even becoming a special occasion anymore, really. Sean's just becoming a regular here. It is him, the mayor of Nerdtropolis, Sean Tajpour, here with us today. Hey, Sean.
Hello, I just snuck myself in. I'm sleeping underneath one of y'all's beds tonight. You don't know which one, but I am there already.
Okay, not creepy at all. Actually going off of last week where Sean was on as well, I actually considered watching I'll Be Home for Christmas, the Jonathan Taylor Thomas Christmas movie that we joked about last week. Like, I wanted it to be on my notes that I watched it this week, but I barely have time to watch the things that I want to watch.
I don't want to do this conversation again, Drew.
That's it.
I totally forgot about it until you mentioned it right now.
Yeah, it just brought back like war memories. I'm like, I
can't believe y'all keep forgetting about the most watched holiday movie of all time.
There's no way that's true.
So the Oscars happened just a couple weeks ago, right? And so finally these guys are like, Drew can stop talking about the Oscars every other week.
Joke's
every
on
week,
us.
Really. Joke is on y'all. There was something I thought was really interesting that I wanted to share a bit. It's a potential rule change for Oscar qualification that it has to still be voted on later this month, but it sounds like they're really trying to pull this off within the Academy. But as of right now, for a film to be considered for Best Picture at the Oscars, the film has to play theatrically for at least 1 week, in one of 6 markets, which is, the markets are LA, New York, San Francisco, Chicago, Miami, or Atlanta. So that's how Netflix gets away with they're the streaming service, and they will do a 1 week release in LA or New York for their movies that they want to be qualified, and then that's it, and they put it on the service. So here, where we're Houston based, we hardly ever get a chance to see those in theaters because we're not one of those 6 markets. And so, however, one of the things that they are trying to change is that a film would need to play in theaters in 15 or 20 of the top 50 markets in the U.S. to be eligible. So meaning that Netflix or whoever would have to play them basically across the country more so than they normally would.
It's just Netflix too. Netflix is the only one that's not playing that game. Apple, everyone's doing it. Amazon, Apple, they're all doing the right way, but this is for
exactly
Netflix.
Right. So Amazon's already been pushing for theaters. Apple has basically just reinforced their commitment to it because they've already been saying that some of their bigger releases, like Killers of the Flower Moon, that's supposed to be a big Oscar contender, they were already planning to do that. This is basically a hurdle for Netflix to overcome because they have avoided this in the past. They've done some, like I remember The Irishman played here in theaters briefly a few years ago, but other ones like The Power of the Dog or their other big Netflix contenders for the Oscars have not played here. And so this is definitely the Academy trying to get more people to go to theaters. This is supposed to increase business for theaters because at the end of the day, the Academy wants you and me and all of us to be seeing movies in theaters when possible and supporting that market as opposed to just watching these at home.
So I also think some people are crying and saying, hey, why is all these Netflix movies winning when they're not really being shown to anybody?
Well, And the other thing too is like Netflix has been gunning hard for a Best Picture Oscar for like years now, and it's not really clear why. Like, they just want it just to have it. It's like they just want to check the box and be like, yeah, we can make, awards caliber movies too. So it just is interesting to me. I don't know if they would, just say, fine, we're done trying to compete in the awards categories and just they'll release their movies on the service or not. I don't know. It's just interesting.
Yeah, I think it's bull crap. Personally, I think I don't know. I thought that the point of the awards was, hey, who did the best movie? I didn't realize it was all a ploy to sucker people into to go into theaters and forcing people's hands. And I thought this was like, people want to tote about like free market and all this other. I mean, I think it's bullcrap. I think that it is. I don't know why they're trying to exercise that kind of power over an entity. Like,
I have a follow-up question. I'm sort of where Jahan's at on this. I think it's kind of a dumb rule, but I get some of it. But my follow-up question is sort of, what does this do for like indie companies that can't afford to release a film in 20 markets instead of one?
Right. Or short films that don't even get the wide release, but they're in the category, and international films. So like there's only certain categories that don't work for that rule, but they're going to allow them in the Oscar.
I feel like this hurts the little man more than anyone.
You're right. That's actually always kind of been a hurdle for some of those movies, because even in the even not for Best Picture, but for like the actor and actress categories, things like that, there are some of these indie movies that have stellar performances and actors and actresses that should be recognized in those acting categories, but the studios behind them don't have the same budget to do these mega campaigns that Netflix or A24 or the big studios are doing. So it's just like this automatic barrier to entry. So yeah, you're right. I mean, and Jahan, the comment you made, it's like, joke's on you for thinking that the Oscars was ever actually about awarding the best movie or best person in any of it, because it's all just a matter of who can pay and run the best campaign. Unfortunately, I wish it truly was, who the best was, but
yeah, I mean, it's all a big circle jerk, and I don't know, man. Yeah, barriers to entry always affect from the bottom up. It's always from the smallest, like that's any barrier of entry in any situation, whether it be politically, whatever. It's always going to affect the smallest, from the bottom up. And Netflix isn't on the bottom. They can easily, and it's also weird that they would target Netflix in such a way. Like, it's very deliberate. It's very, I don't know. It seems wrong on so many levels.
But it's also going to help. But it's also going to help a lot of the theaters, if you think about it. How much more money that industry is going to be making by that rule, pushing more movies out to these movie theaters that have been dying. So I think it's also going to help the industry in that aspect of it.
I mean, sure,
like,
it'll definitely help.
Our most anticipated list, like Killers of the Flower Moon was the top of my list, and if I can catch that in a theater here rather than watching it at home, I absolutely will, because Sean and I both go to the theaters a lot, and I do think that movies get a little bit of a theater bump when you see it there as opposed to watching it in streaming. Or like for example, I went and saw Megan in the theaters, and I was like, this is pretty fun, pretty good, and y'all watched it on streaming. We're like, this is not very good. What's the hype at? This is garbage. And maybe I had a theater bump because I saw it there. I don't know, but some of these awards contenders, I will absolutely seek out to go see in a theater.
It's a theater bump whenever you go into the bathroom and do cocaine during the movie, and you come back and you like it more.
I was just about to say, I was like, are your car keys involved? Is that what's going on here?
Got to get your credit card for your theater bump.
I definitely think there are movies that I've rated on Letterboxd or so on that I maybe got an extra half star from me just because I had a great theater experience, and that goes into it.
That makes sense.
I don't know. I feel like this is definitely a rule change that's for me, but I'd be interested to see if this does help with some of the theatrical business, or if it does make Netflix change their strategy at all. If they're like, okay, screw it, we're not going to focus on the awards as much. I don't think that will be the case though, because I think they really, really, for whatever reason, want a Best Picture Oscar.
But Netflix also doesn't work with any partners. Like Killers of the Flower Moon, I think that's going to be with Sony, right? So they're partnering with Sony to make that theatrical release?
Yeah, Apple is apparently trying to partner with different studios to help distribute their movies. So
right.
it'll, whether it's Paramount or Sony or whoever it is, they'll basically take in some of the box office revenue from a theatrical release and give a little bit more credit to the movie, and then Apple can reap the benefits of when it goes to streaming. Because
Right.
what they're saying in the market is that a movie that is released in theaters first, when it does go on streaming, people are more apt to watch it or flock to it because it has like a little bit more credit to it since it was a theatrical release.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's right.
Netflix
As
has
opposed
like
to being just a
zero,
Netflix movie.
right? Which Netflix has like really no relationship with any big studios. They're like so on their own, standalone. I don't think they really partner up with anyone major. Maybe a couple times, but they don't really have anyone that's like in their back pocket to help them.
Like I haven't watched it yet, but I know the new Adam Sandler
Murder
comedy
Mystery
dropped
2?
on Netflix this past weekend. Yeah, Murder Mystery 2, and it's like I remember I watched the first Murder Mystery on Netflix whenever it came out. I don't remember anything about it at all. But I watched it, and I'll watch the new one at some point. But it's like that is a direct to Netflix Adam Sandler movie, which a lot of those have the reputation of what they are. Like it is what you make of it. If it came out in theaters, would people think that it was like probably funnier or a better movie than if it just dropped on Netflix? I don't know. I don't know if that stigma is still there.
Probably. I think people would be like, oh, finally Adam Sandler returns to the big screen, and even if it was just as mediocre, people would pretend it was better.
Right,
I
exactly.
agree.
Exactly. So anyway, we've I think dug into that as much as we can. Thank you once again for letting me get some Oscars news out here, and also credit to Puck News. They're the ones that broke that story, and I thought it was interesting
It's okay.
to discuss.
This one was more interesting than usual, Drew.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the feedback. I will have a survey. It'll be a Google form that I will be asking questions after that I ask all of you to submit.
There you go. You made it boring again.
So can we talk Dungeons and Dragons?
What?
This is the bread and butter. This is a movie based off of the OG tabletop game. Tabletop Games is the bread and butter of Fresh Out the Box and
Yeah.
the streams that Gary and Jahan are doing 3 times a week. And so now we have a movie based on said game. Even though I don't think D&D is one of the games y'all have even played on your stream. I think y'all have been mostly doing other tabletop games, right? Have y'all actually played D&D on the stream before?
No, we have not. We avoid it because the market is saturated with D&D streamers, and because we want to highlight other games and show people that there are other games other than D&D. A lot of people don't realize that. But, I mean, it's what I started with. It's what Gary started with. And, it'll always be something to us, I think. And, I mean, for me, it's a lot. I've been playing since I was 13. I watched the D&D cartoon. I've seen every D&D movie. There's more. I believe that there are 3 others.
3, I think there's 3. Yeah,
I've seen all 3 of them.
They're bad.
I saw the original one.
What are
in
the other
theaters.
ones other than there was one called Dungeons and Dragons. I remember that one from however many years ago.
All of
what
them-
other ones were there?
All of them are technically Dungeons and Dragons. The first one was a theatrical release. I don't remember what that one was called, but it was supposed to be good. It wasn't good. It was even
Just
as
Dungeons
a
and Dragons. Just called
And that
Dungeons
was
and
one that
Dragons.
came out in 2000 with one of the Wayans brothers. But
Yes,
then
it had one
just
of the
a
Wayans
couple
brothers,
years later, there was a not related sequel, another Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Yeah.
And it might have had something related to the Sword Coast or Baldur's Gate, something like that.
So
in the name.
it did have a lot of stuff like that in it. I'm trying to remember.
Wrath of the Dragon God?
Wrath of the Dragon
2005?
God was the second one that came out, and that one was cool. It was very classically. It was classic. It had all the characters, the elven wizard, the aging human guard captain having to brush off his like dust, that kind of thing. It had the very classic storyline. Dragon awakening. There's a lich. It's a whole thing. I mean, it's not the best. Visually, like it has some issues with its graphics and blah blah blah, but I enjoyed it as a fan. And then the Book of Vile Darkness is the third one, and that one takes a guy, his orders destroyed, trying to protect this like ancient thing, and so he tries to infiltrate this like group of villains and so like it's like a villain party, and like it's interesting. It's also not great, but this movie was the first time like it was a AAA title. This is the first, I think, real AAA with like big names, other than the Wayne's one. That one sucked though.
Book of Vile Darkness is so bad. You're underplayed it by saying it's not very good. It's so bad. Book of Vile Darkness is really, really bad.
I liked parts
Wrath of the Dragon God's actually not that bad.
Wrath of the Dragon God's pretty solid.
They're all terrible, first of all, but it's not like that terrible. But they're all like solid 5 out of 10s or worse.
As a fan of fantasy movies, like from the 80s, 90s, and like that period, like earlier fantasy movies, you have to lower your bar. None of them are really very
They're all
good.
bad, yeah.
They're all
bad, that's true.
Like even the big ones among them, like Dragon Slayer and Willow, like they don't necessarily hold up the best. And you know,
and people that defend Labyrinth and Dark Crystal, those are terrible too, and it's okay to love them and just know that they're terrible. And
Dark Crystal is a masterpiece, and you can eat the entirety of my ass.
All the old D&D movies are also terrible, and that's okay. You can like things that are terrible. Yeah. I expected the newest one, Honor Among Thieves, to be terrible because historically they are terrible. So my expectations were low going in. And I will say that I was pleasantly surprised. It was not terrible.
You hear to hear,
Jahan,
folks.
how about you?
Honor Among
Initial
Thieves,
thoughts?
not terrible. I loved it.
I'm probably in between y'all. Was pleasantly surprised. Really liked it. I don't know if I'm at a loved stage, but I definitely really liked it, and I feel like I will revisit it again. Sean, first off, before you give your thoughts, I want to ask: have you ever played D&D? Have you ever played a game of D&D?
Never. I'm a noob to this D&D stuff, other than seeing what I've seen in pop culture on TV and movies. Never played it. Always wanted to play it, but didn't get to befriend y'all till later on in life, apparently.
If you don't teach your kids about D&D, they're just going to learn about it on the streets. That's
Jahan, you would need to do like a live Nerdtropolis D&D stream.
Oh yeah, we should do that.
Yeah, we'll do like an intro, maybe like an introduction stream, like for noobs.
Yeah, I'll run you through the lost mines of Phandelver.
Sounds scary.
It's the introductory adventure.
But well, yeah, Sean, I know you got to see. I believe you were at the premiere of Dungeons and Dragons at South by Southwest, right?
I was. The world premiere. It was very exciting. That's the only reason I went to South by Southwest. Yeah.
Well, what'd you think? What'd you think of the movie?
I thought it was a great blockbuster. I thought it was a solid blockbuster type film. You know, regardless of when you release it, it's a big hit. I think it's a bad timing for it because so many movies back to back every week are big blockbusters. But if this came out like on a summer, that there wasn't much going on, I thought this would have like killed the entire summer at the box office. But it did pretty well opening. But yeah, I liked it. It was really fun. Didn't know what to expect, and I thought the cast was great.
Yeah, I agree. I actually really like this cast. And as I was watching it,
did Chris Pine become Rob Lowe? When did that happen? Because
you notice the same thing. You notice the same thing. I was, yeah. Is that wild?
It's crazy, man. He evolved. Chris Pine evolved into Rob Lowe, and he's looking like Rob Lowe, which is to say, he's looking good.
Yeah, but also he's kind of like acting a little bit like Rob Lowe was serious at his, when he was younger, but now he's like really funny. Chris Pine used to be really serious, but now he's like kind of a jokey type guy, and loves having fun. So it's really interesting to see them change like that.
He's really interesting because I really like Chris Pine, and actually of all the Chris's get lumped together because there's Hemsworth, Evans, Pratt, and Pine.
Can I add you to the Facebook group for that? There's like Facebook group just for that. It's called like the Chris's
please
group.
Don't. Please don't. But I do find Chris Pine to actually be one of the most interesting or intriguing of them, which in itself is interesting because he really, if I'm actually looking at his filmography right now, and like he doesn't have a whole lot of big hits. Like obviously Star Trek was the real big introduction of him like as a movie star, and I think the Star Trek movies are actually pretty good, and that's from somebody who I'm not like a Trekkie at all. Like my experience with Star Trek is just the Chris Pine, J.J. Abrams.
He's a modern day Captain Kirk, though. If you ever think of someone that would play modern Captain Kirk of today, like Chris Pine at that time was kind of like that.
I would never
Yeah.
have picked Chris Pine, but he has done an excellent job.
But you know his family history, right?
Nope.
Oh, he's got famous parents. He's got a famous grandmother.
The Pine family.
The Pine family is big in show business.
Did they
starting from his
create the famous pine tree?
I guess so.
No, they
Maybe that's
invented
where-
Pine Sol, actually.
Ah, they invented those little pine-scented things that go in cabs.
Yeah, and Pine Sol, as you know, is famous from The Sixth Sense.
But if we're any Chips fans out there, his dad was on Chips. Remember that show?
I've
I do.
The Cop Show.
seen
Mhm.
Chips.
The newest
Yeah.
Chips movie, not so bad.
He's in the Wonder Woman movies, and I like him in those, even though the second one I really didn't like, and his part in it was weird. Like, I like him though. Like, I feel like he comes out of these things unscathed in a way, but seeing him as a lead here in a Dungeons and Dragons movie, I thought was really fun. And then actually, even going on with some of the cast, like I liked Michelle Rodriguez in it. Justice Smith, somebody who I have not been a huge fan of in his other movies. Like, he's in Jurassic World Dominion, he's in Detective Pikachu, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, all that kind of stuff. And like, he's just never really jumped out at me. And I liked him as in this, and thought he was funny and had good comedic timing.
Yeah, he
And,
shines a lot on this one compared to his other movies, which he's good, but like he plays kind of the same type of character, it seems like, or his personality.
Yes.
And he does it the same way in this movie, but it shines for some reason. It works for his character.
He is good in this movie. I liked him
Yeah.
one sooner than you guys. I liked him since Detective Pikachu. I really liked that movie, and I really enjoyed him in that movie. I thought he did a great job. But he is definitely better in this. Like, he's got
Watch
whatever
Sharper.
this is. Which one?
Watch Sharper. This movie just came out. He's in called Sharper. I think it's on Apple TV. It just came out, and he's in it, and he's really good. So if you want to see more of Justice Smith, Sharper on Apple TV Plus.
He's just somebody that in his other movies I feel like has always gotten kind of upstaged by whatever. Like Detective Pikachu, he's obviously upstaged by a Ryan Reynolds voiced Pikachu. Like, that's what you come out of that movie remembering. And then in the Jurassic World movies that he's in, like, Chris Pratt's the star of those, and here it's another Chris that he's working with. But I feel like he doesn't get upstaged as much. Like, he has his time to shine, and he actually has some comedic moments that worked for me. I thought
Well,
Sophia Lillis was good as the tiefling druid as well.
But also Chris Pine gets upstaged too. We haven't talked about him yet, but Chris Pine gets upstaged. He's not the real macho guy in this one that you would think.
This Chris shares the stage a lot better than Chris Pratt. So
Yes, that's actually a really good way to put it, Jahan. I would agree. And then, of course, we've got Hugh Grant, who he's just in the stage of his career where he likes playing, these kind of like goofy supporting characters. As he gets into his older age, I feel like he just likes playing, kind of being more of like a character actor, long gone from the old like heartthrob Hugh Grant.
I think no one wants to
of old.
hire him because he used to be a dick, and now he's just taking what was offered to him for whatever paycheck. He's like, okay, I'll be nicer.
He's had so many little viral clips lately of like his interview clips. He was kind of a dick at the Oscars on the red carpet when somebody was asking him about his part in Glass Onion.
Oh, but that's
Stuff
Ashley
like
Graham
that.
not knowing what questions to ask, but he said that's just his personality, and he kind of jokes that way. I've heard
For sure.
he's really like his sense of humor is a little different, but he's really nice now. Like people may not see it, but like he's a little bit more softer
I think he's
than he used to be.
hilarious.
Yeah,
I think
so,
even
too.
those parts where he's just being kind of dry and whatever, I think is hilarious. But
well, he was in. He did a really good job in that mockumentary about like 2022 in review or something. He was one of the panelists on that. It was a Netflix documentary where they were like talking about the pandemic. He was really funny in that. But no, I thought Hugh Grant in this was great. No notes. Like he nailed Dungeons and Dragons Rogue. Like, that's it. That's the thing. That's the thing that everyone always tries and fails to do. Be
Speaking
a
of
compelling
nailing
jerk.
rogues, Gary and Jahan, you both especially, I want to know what y'all thought about the D&D of it all. Like, obviously you have to translate some of those rules of the world and everything into a movie, so you have to take some liberties and make it flow as a narrative movie. But like, what did you think of the D&D of it all?
I mean,
I want to be the guy to
go
complain
ahead.
first about the bard not casting any spells.
yeah, that was funny.
All right.
Yep.
Now,
Uh-oh, Gary, you broke. You're gone. Your voice is gone.
Oh, yep. The
Explode.
bard came in and made him lose his voice.
right?
There you're back.
Bard cast silence on me. The bard didn't cast any spells, so besides that complaint, I'll talk about the things that I liked, which is basically everything else, right? There was definitely the D&D of it all. Definitely shined through in that when you play Dungeons and Dragons, it's an improv storytelling group game, so ridiculous things happen because sometimes they're your best plan, and sometimes they're your only plan, and sometimes you think of one plan and everyone's like, cool, that's the one we're gonna do, and you wind up doing the dumbest thing that you could possibly imagine. And throughout this Dungeons and Dragons movie, I was many times like laughing because that's, the way the players would have reacted. Like, this is the dumb plan that the players would have come up with, and not the smartest plan and not the best plan. It's just the plan, and that's what we're going to try to do. That really shined through across every single scene of the movie, I thought.
That was absolutely. I had the exact same thought, Gary. Like there's a scene where they're like, if we could tie a rope to this axe and throw the axe across the gap, and that's how
Yeah.
we'll cross this bridge. And I'm like, that is 100% something that myself or Gary or Zach or the people that we've played D&D with have absolutely tried in the past and failed until you realize what you actually should be doing. And I did like that about it. Or just the, you try something and you botch, you try some things and you succeed amazingly against all the expectations. And I like that.
Yeah, this is much less like, it's not necessarily like the literary world of D&D, like from like the authors like R.A. Salvatore or anything like that. It's much more this is the end result of a game that people played. Like, this is because like they have the similar player reactions, they have the similar lines of thought, and so they nailed D&D as well. They really did. I could go into the minutia, dude, and like.
We'll talk spoilers in a second, but like the jailbreak scene is such a D&D like moment.
Yeah,
in the
Oh,
beginning
absolutely.
of the movie, I was just like,
it was
oh my
really
God.
fun. I was dying. I was
Yeah.
laughing so hard. I didn't expect, like, I thought, well, we'll talk about it. But
We're talking about the intro?
the intro scene, we do need to talk about that one
Oh, yeah.
a little bit. Jonathan!
Jonathan!
Jonathan! Oh my God! Stop! All right, you gotta give me. I can't handle that. It was too good. It was too good. It was one of my favorite things I've ever seen in a movie. But yeah. I mean, so yeah. Obviously, there are the trolls online that are like, "Oh, druids can't turn into owl bears," and like stuff like that. And I could go on and on about how most barbarians don't have the action economy to take like 12 people on at a time, or I don't know. It's just. There are nitpicks, but all in all, it was pretty faithful to Dungeons and Dragons. You see some real spells happen. You see some real situations. The classes were very well represented. I thought it was really one of my favorite things. I thought it was really clever. The sorcerer, he's a sorcerer, which means that he's born with magic, and he was born with magic because someone in his line was a powerful wizard, which is a very interesting thing that I haven't really seen.
Which character is this?
The Justice Smith.
Justice
Oh,
Smith.
okay, okay,
He's
yeah.
a sorcerer. Very
Right.
cool. I thought
I
Michelle.
like that he had the coin. I'll try not to spoil the scene, but he had the cleric coin, and there was
I
a
get to.
specific amount of questions he was allowed to ask with the cleric coin, and they were like, "Why is it 5? That seems arbitrary." And for him to be like, "I don't know. That's just the rules." I liked that. That's D&D. It's like, look, man, I don't know. That's just the rules.
I didn't come
It's
up with
fine."
it. Yeah, it was very good.
Well, and another bit kind of along those lines
That's such
throughout
a
the
good
movie,
bit.
and I feel like as somebody that's played D&D, this is absolutely something that happens, is when you do have a magic user in your party, whether it's a sorcerer or wizard, whatever, anytime you come up against opposition, you look at the magic user and you're like, can't you magic your way out of
Yeah,
this? And that's
everyone
a bit
turns.
throughout. He's like, no,
Magic?
it just magic doesn't work that way. It
Can
doesn't
you
always
magic
work
it
that way.
though? I don't know how magic works. I'm a barbarian. Can you magic it?
Yeah, Michelle Rodriguez freaking killed it as the barbarian.
I had such low expectations for that role, and I couldn't have been more wrong. The combat coordination for her character just
Solid.
made her feel like such a beast boss tank.
Such a
badass.
beast. Like
She
it was
beat the shit out of
believable.
everyone.
It was believable because like she was using momentum and stuff, and like she was
Mm-hmm.
actually. But also, I don't know what workout she did, but she was beefy. Like she looked like she could beat someone's ass, and I just thought it was all really funny. I can't wait to talk about specific scenes. The one thing that killed me, the Paladin character, there were certain things that he was doing that are very, a lot of them are like inside jokes for like TTRPGs, like Paladins are no fun. They always make you question everything. You can't do anything fun with them around, and they nailed it. They nailed it, and it was so much fun. I laughed probably the hardest at his scenes, but the D&D of it all was perfect. My only real complaint is that the bard never casts any magic, which is weird, because they are full casters. They cast just as much spells as sorcerers and wizards. But
I love
there
seeing the Tabaxi in the background. I love seeing the orcs and the Aarakocra. They're like deep diving in on these D&D races.
yeah, that's another thing. The setting. So this is Faerun. This is one of the main settings of Dungeons and Dragons. It's Faerun. This is where Drizzt Do'Urden, one of the most famous Dungeons and Dragons character, resides. This is where all of R.A. Salvatore's books take place, and they start in the spine of the world, in the north, and then they come down. They go to Baldur's. They talk about Baldur's Gate. They go to Neverwinter.
They mentioned Baldur's Gate. Yeah, that stuck out to me too.
They talk about Baldur's Gate was a cool mention. I love, they're on the Sword Coast. It was very real. Like, it felt real, and I really appreciated how they didn't, like, linger on those details. They just were there, and it made it very believable to me. It made it feel real in a way that I wasn't expecting, and it made me very happy, because Faerun is, like, it was a second home to me when I was a kid. You know what I mean? Like, I love Faerun, and it was very...
There was a lot that didn't show of that place. Like, there's more to see.
So much. There have been hundreds of novels and player materials and all kinds of things that come out in that setting. It's a very large
It seemed
setting.
like a lot of this movie took place in and around Neverwinter,
Yes.
which is the capital. So it would make sense to kind of set it there and have all the main actions be around that. It's sort of the King's Landing of Faerun.
Neverwinter is one of the big cities, and one of the coolest parts about Neverwinter they didn't really touch on were the Lords of Neverwinter. And they didn't really talk about that too much, which is fine. You don't have to. It's cool. The bard took over. It's cool. No need to explain. That's the other thing I really appreciated. They did what they wanted with the setting. They used it properly, and they respected it at the same time. But yeah, Neverwinter is a great setting. They have so many video games that take place there. I feel like they did it justice. It was a big, sprawling city with like all these cool magical amenities. That was another thing that they did that I felt was really cool. Was they because it's not medieval times. Everyone has magic. There's magic everywhere. So like they had that elevation of everything they were doing. They were living the good life as if they had technology because they had magic. And yeah.
Yeah, I was sort of speculative and worried going into it that it was going to take itself too seriously and be kind of a grim, dark setting and just be kind of droll and maybe have some cool scenes, but it was really bright and colorful, action-packed, and a lot of fun.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever played an actual D&D session with friends where we didn't have a point where we laugh uncontrollably because somebody's character did something silly or something didn't work out. So I feel like that humor of actually playing D&D, unless you're playing with people that are super, super self-serious, which, what fun is that? But, that the feeling of playing the game with your friends was kind of captured with the humor and jest between the party members in this, which we haven't even really talked much about. Sophia Lillis, who played the druid in the movie, because for me, druids are one of my favorite classes in D&D, and I love the shape-shifting and all that kind of stuff. Like, anytime I've played a druid, I always had a wild shape aspect to it, and to me, she was honestly one of my favorite members of the party, and we haven't really talked about her very much, but I don't know, I just felt all of the classes were just very well represented and unique, and each had their own strengths. So yeah. The D&D world building of it all was was great.
She was a great druid. I didn't realize she was going to be a tiefling when I first saw her because she doesn't look like one. But I feel like tieflings look pretty weird, and it might be weird to depict them because they're supposed to have like red brown skin kind of stuff, and like they have like fissures in their skin sometimes that like you can see
Almost
hellfire
look more
through,
like
and
devil,
More
kind of
devilly.
more
stereotypical
devilly. I thought she was going to be like
nature.
some sort of satyr or something because of the way her horns look, but she's a tiefling. I thought she was a great tiefling.
She had a
reminded
tail
me
too,
of-
didn't she?
She
I
did
didn't
have a
even see
tail.
it till the end.
She did.
Yeah.
Tieflings have tails, so.
She reminded me of every single druid that I've ever seen in my entire life, in that it is a petite redhead girl that turns into big monsters.
She nailed it. Yeah, she was great. I also enjoyed her character. I enjoyed the whole party, man. It was. I was very happy with what I saw.
Perfect.
Really happy with the way they handled the wild magic sorcerer. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was cool.
This might be a silly question. Is the Red Wizards that were part of this film
The
as
Red
the antagonist,
Wizards-
is that
Bro.
like part of D&D lore?
They have been a huge part of D&D lore, at least since I started, which was in 3rd edition. The Red Wizards of Thay are like a super awesome bad guy. They also showed some Knights of Thay. The Knights of Thay all of them have the tattoos on their heads, and the tattoos bind the knights to the wizards. The knights are 100% loyal because they have to be, but I do believe that they take on the sigils voluntarily. But yeah, they're huge. They are very much so a classic Dungeons and Dragons entity.
Perfect. Sean, did you have anything? I know we've been nerding out about all the.
I've been listening and I've been reading a little bit about the development of the film. I'm curious of like how it got to where it was, and apparently it went through a lot of different hands. Apparently Warner Brothers was going to make this movie with another company, and then Hasbro came in and was saying, filed a lawsuit about like, no, we're making it's our stuff. We're making it. We have the IP for it. I'm just reading through it, and it's like Joe Manganiello was he wrote a script and he wanted to get it done with Dwayne Johnson, and that didn't happen. And then Universal Pictures was supposed to be doing this movie with Hasbro, and then it just changed hands finally to Paramount Pictures. And then Chris McKay from the Lego, I think he's the Lego guy. Who's Chris McKay is the Lego Batman movie. He was going to do it before it changed hands again, so it just went through a lot of to get to where it was today.
On the Joe Mango Jelly front, I don't know if you know that he's a huge nerd. He's always been a huge
he's a big
nerd.
D&D fan. He has a big D&D table that he posts about,
Yeah.
and he had a script for this, but he's not involved in any
So
way.
he also did things like he wrote the foreword for like the D&D, the Art of D&D book that I have, and like it was really touching. And he talked about his childhood, but he's a huge fan of Dungeons and Dragons. He's a huge fan of one of the settings, which is Dragonlance. It's a different setting. It's not Faerun, and apparently, I read that he is talking about like that's still in the works. Like he's going to do something with Dragonlance in a visual medium. So that's. I don't know much about it. It's one of those things that just popped up. But
yeah, he needs to be in the franchise somewhat,
he does. He's such a fan.
Yeah.
He
And so are
does.
the writers too, the writers and directors. The funny thing is, Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daley were supposed to be directing The Flash, and then I remember they left The Flash, the movie with Ezra Miller, and then they jumped on this. So if they didn't have that situation with The Flash,
What a ride.
yeah.
A notable casting thing. So I remember back in 2020, in the first year of the pandemic, that's when Bridgerton, like the Netflix show, kind of went super viral. And
That's
like,
where that
everybody
guy's
was-
from.
Yeah, and so Regé-Jean Page was kind of the big standout of the first season of Bridgerton, and he famously, after that first season, was like, "That's it. I'm not returning for the second season. Like, I'm going to go be a movie star." And at that time, there's all this hype around him of like, this guy could be the next Bond. Like this, Regé-Jean Page, he's the next
good.
big movie star.
He's good.
And the first big piece of casting in his post Bridgerton career that came out was that he was cast in Dungeons and Dragons. So I remember that being like an interesting choice. Because back then, when you hear even as Dungeons and Dragons fans as we are, when you hear that that they're making a movie of it, as Gary said, your expectations are low, and so I'm like,
historically they've been bad. Okay, this is not on me this time.
So this guy who's supposed to be the next big movie star, it's like, you're gonna make a Dungeons and Dragons movie, okay, bro? Like, good luck, have fun.
And that's the reason all the girls are watching this movie. They love him.
And he is good at it for his role. He's kind of
it's a silly role, but it's a serious role. But he nails it, and just that little bit we've seen of him, and especially his fighting and his charisma and his charm. If you give him like a legit role, he can pull it off.
Well, do y'all want to do a super quick spoiler discussion and just dive into a few of the moments that really stuck out and that we liked?
I would also like to say I too enjoyed Bridgerton.
My wife watched it. I have not seen a single minute of Bridgerton, I can confidently say.
My mom watched it, and so I watched it too.
So we're going to spoilers?
Yeah, we'll do spoilers. If you don't want to hear spoilers, then skip ahead a little bit. I might time it out and try to put it in the notes, but I might not. So just skip ahead a little bit. Spoilers for the Dungeons and Dragons movie in 3, 2, 1.
Jonathan!
Yeah, the movie starts off with one of the greatest scenes. I love how they start off in jail. I love how that orc comes and hits on Michelle, and she breaks both of his legs the wrong way, and then I'm pretty sure he dies.
Yeah, it really seemed like he died. Yep.
Because like they unload him from the carriage like he's like Hannibal Lecter, and then they just immediately establish her as like unfuckwithable. She just murders this guy. It was great.
Real quick, did anyone take a potato to the movie as their movie ticket?
I did not, but I saw that you could do that. Yeah, that was cool.
AMC.
No, that's funny.
No, it would have helped you save for that $35 popcorn bucket.
How much it was?
Yeah, it was $35.
What was it? A mimic dice thing? What was it?
It was a D20 that opened up, and it was full of popcorn. And that was
Which a friend of ours actually didn't go see the movie, but went to the theater specifically to buy that bucket.
A lot of people did.
And take it home.
That's what I did for the Scream bucket.
What? Who did that? Did Blake do that?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, that seems like a Blake.
Seems like a Blake thing to do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I did. I couldn't do it, man. I just couldn't. I've paid too much money for too many lumps of plastic. Couldn't do it. But
we don't have AMC in the desert in the mountains, so I didn't have the opportunity to pay with a potato, nor did I know about it.
Did you take a potato to eat on that least?
Theater? Is it part of a chain?
It's part of Mitchell Theater chain.
Not Magic Theaters?
No.
Interesting.
But it's awesome to see like the Jim Henson style cost like kind of creatures.
I was not expecting it. It made me so
There was
happy.
a lot of practical creatures and things in it that I really enjoyed.
That was
There's
probably my
a lot of
favorite
CG
thing.
too, but
there was CG, but also the practical stuff was really fun.
The practical made it work because like those kinds of things don't really look that good when you CG them. Like Dragonborns, like a Dragonborn lizard man, like that doesn't look great in my opinion in CG. And the practical effects, while it looked like a guy working a puppet, it also looked great. It gave me real nostalgia.
It did. The Dragonborn was intimidating looking, and he wasn't even trying to be.
And then also the Eric Crockra. Jonathan! That was, guy died, dude. That was such a great escape plan. We really need Jonathan to come here. And then they grab... So for those of you that don't know, they grabbed the Aarakocra, which is a bird race. They were waiting for him to come to the hearing the whole time because their plan was to jump out the window with him and hope that he broke their flaw with
But
his
was that the
wings.
original plan, or they really thought he would persuade them to let them go?
The
and
whole-
then
I
the
think
backup
that's
plan
just
was
what
that.
they were saying when the whole
Yeah.
time they were planning
The
to
whole
jump
plan
out
is
the
to
window.
dive out
The
the
whole
window.
time, I
And
thought they
even
bribed this
though-
guy. I thought they bribed the guy. And then they jump out the window with him. I didn't see it coming at all. And I died.
I love that he passed his check. The bard passed his charisma check. They were gonna let them free and let them go. But this is what I was talking about earlier in D&D. Sometimes you have one plan, and you just know they're not gonna let you go. You're never gonna pass your charisma check. So your one plan's to jump out the window and ride their bird guy to freedom. And so that's, to me, that's so D&D. Like, you could have waited, you could have waited to hear your answer. You could have played your game. Well, you don't have time for that in Dungeons and Dragons. You have to do the most wild, absurd plan right now because that's what you guys already agreed on, and you're in for it.
It was perfectly D&D.
It set the pace for the movie for
It
sure.
really, I loved it. That guy that's sitting at the table with the stamp, the heavier set guy. Who is that guy? That guy's somebody, right? He looks so familiar. And for a second, I thought it was Kyle Gass, but I don't think it was. And I was just really surprised. I've seen that guy play similar roles in the past.
Which character is this?
He was one of the people on the parole board or whatever. He was the overweight gentleman with the stamp. But, I mean, it's not important. I was just curious.
Absolution Council.
Yeah, I thought he was Kyle Gass when I first saw him. I was like, is that Kyle Gass? Because that would be awesome. But I don't think it was. Yeah, that set the pace for the movie. I thought it was great. And they used the whole situation to tell the backstory of what happened. That was cool. I thought it was really... I don't know if you guys noticed when the Red Wizard did the time stop during the raid. One person, like, has their face, like, halfway in it, right? And their eyes looking to the right. And when they time freeze, they look to the left. And so their eyes are looking opposite directions. And I thought that was it was hilarious, and it was a really nice touch.
Can we talk about the big cameo in the middle of the movie as well?
Bradley
Best
Cooper?
halfling
Oh,
ever.
that like confused me because I was like, this guy looks like Bradley Cooper. Is that really him?
It wasn't
And then
him.
it probably took me a week to figure it out if it was because no one was talking about it. No one
Right.
talked about it, especially during like the world. No one talked about it. I'm like, then there's a lot of actors that have lookalikes, right? Actors just in general, but they're real like big actors too. They just look the same. They have the same features. It's like, man, there is a guy that looks like Bradley Cooper as the actor. Maybe that's who that is. But no, it ended up being Bradley Cooper. And they weren't in the same. They didn't film that together. Michelle Rodriguez and him. He wasn't. They weren't there at the same time, which was interesting.
I mean that makes sense because of the perspective thing. They did away.
He is
they did
a
such
halfling.
a.
It's worth noting.
They did such a
And,
shitty job
the-
compared to like the Lord of the Rings. Like it looks so hokey, but I was fine
I
with
think
it.
that's the point. Maybe that was the point, though.
It was kind of the
Like,
point, though.
I don't know. I loved the build of it because she kept kind of referencing her previous love and the story there, and it's just kind of part of her backstory, but you don't think it's ever going to be acted upon, and then they happen to stop in, and she goes, and I definitely had the reaction of like, is that Bradley Cooper? And I was kind of in disbelief that Bradley Cooper, that here he was in a D&D movie as a halfling. But I loved the gimmick. I loved that, like, he, his thing is barbarian women. He had moved on from Holga, from Michelle Rodriguez's character, had a new barbarian love interest. I don't know.
An
even made me
larger
laugh.
woman.
I thought it was a wonderful cameo and a hilarious moment that's worth mentioning.
It reminded me of my parents.
And then what else? I mean,
My
there were some of
father
the
is much
things that were kind of
smaller than my
gimmicky, like
mother.
obviously it's Dungeons and Dragons. There has to be a dragon at some point. The fact that you finally get a dragon and he's a big old chunky boy dragon,
Loved
which was
Fat
like,
Dragon. Loved Fat Dragon.
pretty silly, but I liked
is
it.
that a real thing in D&D? The Fat
Yes,
Dragon?
he is.
I haven't seen it. I was unaware of whether or not it's a real thing, but there's no reason why it can't be.
He is real. He's been around since 2nd edition. He has a name, and throughout the lore, he's survived hundreds of years. Each time he's written in, it's a couple more 100 years that he's survived. And so at this point, he's just survived and eaten so long that he has turned himself into quite the pudgy
Into a
boy.
fat fatty, and he's adorable,
Timber,
and I loved it.
Timberchod.
I loved it when he was
Timberchod is-
rolling down. Just couldn't really go anywhere, just rolling it down on the side.
Yeah, he was just like chasing them, but he was just rolling after them and not
Very
even able to
effectively
gallop.
though. Very effectively though. He
would have crushed them.
Yeah.
That was a great sequence. Yeah, I loved so before that they did the thing that you guys were talking about with the coins. The coin to talk to the dead. That scene killed me. I was crying.
That was great. That was a great bit. And for sure, I've had times in campaigns where like you're using a spell to talk to the dead or do something, and you have a limited amount of questions, and you really are sitting there and thinking about how to ask it, and the fact that, and you can reuse those things, which is what's great. And the fact that we go from one to the next to be like, we'll just move on.
Yeah, well, the
Okay.
guy that's like, yeah, it was the morning of the battle. I got out of the bathtub. I slipped and hit my head. He's like, and then what happened? He's like, that's it. I died. He's like he didn't know anything else. And he's like, I thought you were the guy. No, that's my brother.
Jahan, I think that Thimbershad, the fat version,
Yep.
was designed by the Green Ronin team. And so don't quote me on that, but Thimbershad's been around since 2nd edition, and Wizards of the Coast had an event a couple years ago that was like, write some lore, and if your lore wins, we'll put it in our book. And I believe it was the Green Ronin design team that created Fat Thimbershad.
If that's true, then that's great. And they
I saw
They should
I
probably
saw
get some money.
Nicole Lindros and Troy were talking about it
Oh,
on
nice.
Facebook. And so it was like, hey, look, our thing won, and it's in the movie. So I wasn't able to verify it anywhere, but I'm pretty sure that that's from the Green Ronin
Hey,
team.
we know the people that did that. That's cool.
The fat version.
We know the fat
They're all
people.
they're all really funny, awesome people over at Green Ronin, so they would do something like that.
Yeah.
What's Troy's Sasquatch? Gravy Squatch.
Gravy Squatch, yeah.
Troy's always talking about Gravy Squatch, who will come to your house in the night and leave ladles of gravy in your shoes if you're a good boy. And so that's sort of the same mind and design team that might have come up with Fat Thimbershad.
What is the creature called that's in the maze
The
sequence?
Displacer Beast.
Yes.
Is that what it's called? It's like looked like a
The
panther,
panther?
but with,
Yeah,
it
it's a
can
Displacer
create
Beast.
illusions.
So, yeah, Displacer Beasts never look like they are where they actually are. They always look like they're off to the side. So it makes it really hard to hit them. And yeah, they're a very classic Dungeons & Dragons monster.
There was one scene where I was confused because I feel like it was there. It was like reversed, like he was obviously projecting itself. But I was like, no, it wasn't edited properly to me in my eyes. I was like, no, it's still there. I don't know how it was able to project when it just like killed someone right there. I'm nitpicking.
They tricked you.
I know. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah,
The Mimic in the dungeon also. The Mimic in the maze was a good... You have to have a Mimic if you're making...
The Mimic was
a
good.
movie.
I'm glad
Mimic
that
was
the
good.
Mimic was there and only like a little bit. The gelatinous cube was also great, and then
I was gonna say, was the cube they jumped into? That was a proper gelatinous.
that's called a
cube,
gelatinous cube, yeah, and yeah, that was pretty much how it works. Yeah, you go inside it and it melts you, and that's it. They also so there's a lot of smaller things too, like when they're being walked in handcuffs from the rogue's mansion or whatever through the street. There's these little creatures that are fighting over like an amulet or something on the chains. Those are rust monsters, and those are also very classic. I was happy to see those as well.
And those other
love that
people in the
there's so many
maze,
little
that's from
things
the
like-
that's from the 80s cartoon.
Yeah, the party in the maze. There was one of their opposition parties is the full party of characters from the like 60s or 70s cartoon.
Yeah, people
I
going
assumed
crazy for
they
that.
were some sort of a nod to something, but I didn't catch what it was. I was kind
Yeah,
of
from the-
expecting like, oh, is there a cameo or something in the party? But that makes more sense. It was more of just a D&D
From the animated series.
inside
D&D
joke.
nod. It was good.
Yeah.
I was very happy with that.
I
I
think that would have been a great time to do a Critical Role cameo too, though, and throw the Critical Role party in the dungeon.
I heard people talking about them being in the movie. I didn't notice any of them if they were.
I didn't notice them. Also, I didn't see them.
The other cameo, all the dead people apparently were the comedy trio of Auntie Donna, which is like an Australian improv team. I saw on like their TikTok that they were in it. I was like, oh, that was you guys. That's crazy. And like looking back, they did kind of look like them, so that's funny. Yeah, I feel like we skipped over a few things.
Probably. The other thing I wanted to know is like the owlbear. So the druid, she transforms into an owlbear a couple times in the film, and I, from playing D&D, I know the owlbear is a thing, but still seeing it here in motion and the quick movements of the head like an owl, but on the giant frame, I thought was very interesting and it was kind of, it's like you see it and you're like, that makes sense for what it is and why it moves that way, but I wouldn't have imagined it moving that way in my head playing D&D.
It
if
was
that makes
very
sense.
cool. Yeah, it made it look like scarier. Like
Right,
was-
exactly. It's super intimidating because
was-
it has this head that moves fast and will look at you with these piercing eyes, and then you don't want that massive frame to turn towards you.
Because owls are birds of prey. It's just we're not their prey, so we're not afraid. And like this thing that could eat us has the same features, and suddenly it's frightening, and it was very effective. I liked it a lot. A lot of people were up in arms, like, "Oh, druids can't turn into owlbears. Who cares? Shut up."
Every Dungeons and Dragons campaign has some bit of homebrew in it somewhere.
Exactly.
And that's whenever you're adding your own flavor to it, right? So if your druid wants to become an owlbear instead of a bear, just use the bear stat block. Sure, no problem. Let's do it. Keep going. Fine.
No harm, no foul. Yeah.
No harm, no foul. You just change the way it looks. That's not a problem. I looked it up to see if there were any Critical Role cameos, but apparently it was just a phrase that was said in the beginning, but they were not actually in it. But when Simon talks about his spell smelling like fresh cut grass when he's on that stage,
That's why
grab
that.
everybody.
Yeah, that's why that sounded familiar. Freaking Sam
Fresh
Riegel.
cut grass. That's
going-
right. Sam Riegel has a character named Fresh Cut Grass.
Yeah.
So that was a little nod to the Critical Role folks and fans out there.
I could do the bit that's like the big bit that's from, but it's inappropriate, so I won't.
Do it.
I did like that another big part of the movie is having to actually attune to a magic item for a sorcerer, which I feel like in a lot of campaigns I've played, that's when you get into like the nitty gritty of like, do I have to attune to this or so on? Like, I feel like a lot of the DMs I've played with haven't really enforced attuning to an item, so I liked that it was a big obstacle in the movie and kind of a plot point of having to actually attune to a magic item. I thought that was
I thought it was great.
interesting. And then also the fact that one of them has a teleportation staff and doesn't even know that that's what it is until eventually the sorcerer's like, oh yeah, where'd you get this? How do you have this?
That's
like,
a
I don't know, I
hither.
just have it.
That's a hither tither stick, and then he can play Portal. I thought that was really cool too.
Are the some of the MacGuffin items in the movie, are these real D&D items like the Helm of Disjunction and the Tablet of Resurrection? Are those actually D&D items that have that exist in
Not to
in the lore?
my knowledge, but the Helmet of Dysfunction, I wouldn't be surprised if it was. The Tablet of Resurrection is not something I've ever heard of, but they're all scrolls and that kind of thing. So really, I mean, you're just getting nitpicky if you're like pulling those things apart. It's like they made stuff, they took liberties. It's okay.
Yeah, it looks like they did take liberties. I don't know of a Helm of Disjunction, but there is in 3rd edition. There's a spell called Mordenkainen's Disjunction, and so they were using Mordenkainen's seal, and they were looking for the Helm of Disjunction. So they definitely did some research when they were naming it.
Yeah.
They used Mordenkainen's Disjunction sort of to break the spell. But yeah, it's not named magic items, not to my know. But then that's solved immediately because now all Wizards of the Coast has to do is make a supplement book for their movie, and now all those items are real again. Hooray!
That's what a lot of it felt like. Like I was like, they're probably just gonna put. I'm sure that you're gonna get to like see all the character sheets of the party. You can play with them. You can put them in your game. I'm sure they're gonna put the magic items in, and the bad guys. They typically do things like that. So. What'd you guys think about the Red Mages and Thay? That was really cool. I really liked how we found out about that stuff because the Paladin's backstory. He started talking about his backstory. And we get to see this awesome sequence that was so... Man, I didn't envision Thay looking like that. It was really cool. It was like a wasteland with these super mega ziggurats that were like where everyone lived. It was pretty cool.
Being a child and being subjected to a huge poison death cloud that turns your parents into an undead army that try to chase you down and kill you, that's a pretty cool background.
It's a pretty good background. It's a pretty cool background.
And I thought that the main one, what's her name? Safina, the Red Wizard that's kind of the main antagonist, I thought was pretty appropriately intimidating, but also kind of just the looks and everything that she would give. I don't know. I thought she had a good mixture of comedy while being still intimidating and
when she was like, there's a wild sheep amongst us, and then like flipped her shit, and like that was pretty scary. I was like, oh man, that was cool.
And
Yeah,
even as Hugh Grant's character, because he's kind of the rogue and also one of the antagonists, and the fact that she's like his advisor and always there, and anytime he's even in meetings with people, whatever, they're always just kind of creeped out by her being there. And they all kind of acknowledge that she's freaky, but nobody does anything about it, and it turns out that she's a red wizard that's just been there in plain sight.
I love how that's how dangerous a single red wizard is. And they come from orders of red wizards, but one could take over your entire country and kill everybody.
Which is why they have to stay hidden, because people, as you saw, as soon as somebody saw those tattoos, it was kill on sight. And like because that's how bad they are. They really are just pure evil.
I did like also, it gave me actually Shades of the Avengers, where Hulk fights Loki, or grabs Loki and smashes him into the ground repeatedly.
That's what I thought too.
Was kind of the vibe I got when the Druid and Owlbear form just kind of pounds the daylights out of
As
the
funny as it
Red Wizard
was,
at
honestly, it wasn't my favorite end to it, but it just kind of highlighted that wasn't the point of the movie, It was more about the actual journey and the party and the whole thing. It wasn't really about the big bad in the first place. It was this other thing. But I also did feel like she kind of got shortchanged a little bit in that exchange.
And of course, we are in spoilers, but I'll still just, major spoiler warning for the end. But as soon as Michelle Rodriguez's Holga dies, it's like immediately evident that they're going to use the resurrection tablet on her. But at the same time, it was cliche, but I didn't mind it.
I
But until you saw the
knew-
flashback though of why they used it was kind of touching, to be honest. Seeing that
Right,
that's
like
actually that's really her mom, if you think about it, because that was the
Nice.
only female in her life, and so that was really touching to see that. That was probably they did a really good job with that. That was
I
pretty
think that's
emotional
what
there.
made the moment work.
Yeah.
And
I
it could have
love-
otherwise been cheesy.
From that
cliche.
perspective, from her perspective, right? From the daughter's perspective, like, this is really my mom, really. So
Yeah, I loved
agree.
their relationship a lot. It was really cute. And
I thought it was going to be Simon the Sorcerer who died, because I knew that they were going to save somebody from the party with it, because it became obvious pretty early that they weren't going to save the mom with it. It was just like, all right, who's going to die?
Yeah,
yeah.
100%.
The other cool thing was the Harpers. The Harpers was a cool nod. They're a pretty
Yeah.
big faction in Forgotten Realms. So there was it was chock full of lore. It was chock full of nods. It was chock full of flavor, and it did D&D right.
Yeah.
Like straight up. Are we doing? I'll do my grade. Like straight up. Like I give it like 9 out of 10. I was high on this movie. I liked it a lot. Couldn't expect better from a D&D movie. Really, it exceeded all my expectations. I loved it.
I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Way better than I expected, so also exceeded my expectations. I didn't see the rust monsters, and I didn't get a great look at the second party running around the maze, so I wonder if they have the fat little dungeon master with them. I'm going to have to rewatch it. I'm going to rewatch it
I don't
again.
think they did.
I hope they do. I'm going to have to rewatch it again in the future. I give it a 7C, and I say this is certified fresh out the Bizox.
How about you, Sean? What was your? I believe I know your score on your
Yeah,
official Nerdtropolis.
I do it by
review.
5 stars. I give it 4, so 8 out of 10 is what I give it. It's a really solid blockbuster film that even non-D&D fans will enjoy. Like me, like I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. A lot of adventure, looks great. You don't need to know D&D to watch it.
My initial review on Letterboxd was I did 7 out of 10, but I think after talking about y'all and after sitting on it for a few days, I might be up to an 8 out of 10. But I won't do that officially. I have to rewatch it, but I feel like it's only going to go up on a rewatch. Seems pretty rewatchable. That you can find things you didn't notice the first time, or new like little quick jabs that will, like a quick line that might make you laugh that you didn't catch the first time. I don't know. I think it's rewatchable. I liked it. I liked it a lot. So perfect. I think we can say all around that it is certified fresh out the box.
When this movie got announced, I don't think that we expected that to be true. I think all of us, like even me, I was against it. I did not want this. I thought they were going to butcher it. I thought they were going to drag it through the mud. I thought it was going to be awful. But
I expected it to be bad all the way up until I left the theater yesterday. It didn't ever become bad. Even after the strong start with the jailbreak and the Aarakocra, I was like, well, this could still go downhill. This could still be bad.
Yeah,
It
that's
wasn't. It was not bad.
All right. Well, that wraps up our D&D discussion. However, we still have to do some quick, fresh takes of the week where we can go through and talk about some other things that we've been watching and enjoying. But we'll try to go through this relatively quickly. But I do want to. The big thing of these is I do want to give the stage to Gary for a bit, because it is worth noting that this past weekend was WrestleMania weekend. So I want to, which I also watched. But Gary is way more up to date on all the wrestling storylines and goings on of the the world of Raw and SmackDown and NXT than I am. So I want to give the floor to him for a minute to talk about some WrestleMania thoughts.
So WrestleMania is 2 nights now, Saturday and Sunday. I set my alarm for Saturday morning to make sure I could get up in time to watch the NXT show, which was before the first part of WrestleMania. So I basically had 3 premium live events just like back to back to back. I was just eating wrestling, and then I was so disappointed with the second night of WrestleMania that I started watching old WrestleManias on Peacock after that. So I had even more WrestleMania, but we'll talk about, let's talk about night 1. We'll talk about the being sold to Endeavor last, because that's what had happened last. It happened after Mania. So night 1 of Mania was awesome. I caught on for the pre-show and watched all the announcers sit outside and talk to all the fans and show you all the cool backstage stuff and walk around. There were some highlights, in my opinion. The Rhea Ripley Charlotte Flair match was out of control. A great match. They just really beat the crap out of each other, put on a hell of a match. Rhea Ripley won the belt, beat Charlotte at Mania. Charlotte had a whole moment outside the ring that was like, you could see on her face, holy crap, I'm exhausted, but that was a good match. Really good highlight of the weekend, Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair.
They're both great.
Yeah, they are. Charlotte Flair, to me, is one of the best female wrestlers we'll ever see, ever. And I try to stay out of arguments, but I see a lot of debates on Reddit about whether Becky Lynch is better or Asuka or all these other people. But to me, Charlotte Flair is sort of the pinnacle of women's wrestling. She's just phenomenal. And
what about that match with Damage Control with some old school wrestlers? That was pretty fun.
Man, I thought that match was awful, and I don't even have it on my list to talk about. Yeah, there's no reason for Lita from 1997 fame and Trish Stratus from 1998 fame to be holding the women's tag team championships. They don't need to have those belts. They didn't need a WrestleMania match, and they sure as hell should not have retained those belts in that WrestleMania match. That was terrible. I took all the terrible matches off, except all of part 2 was pretty bad. After Rhea Ripley, Charlotte Flair, I would say that Dominic and Rey Mysterio had a match that was really funny. Dominic Mysterio is, of course, Rey Mysterio's son. They did a whole father-son tag team thing last year. This year has been all about him turning on his dad, and it's some of the funniest promos going on in wrestling right now.
Yeah, all his arrest stuff has been like pretty funny, and then seeing it all played back was good. And his entrance was probably one of my favorite entrances of the entire WrestleMania.
Corrections is not a correctional.
Came out in a correctional van. They backed into the arena in like a correctional van and had police walk him down to the ring.
But you notice like one of the guys was like a horrible actor. He looked scared walking down, and like just watching their emotion when they're doing that. They're like, what are we doing? This is our first time pretending to be the police or whatever.
Everyone there is like, what are we doing? Even Dom is like, what am I doing with my life? His character's hilarious. So he turned on his dad and he hates his dad, and he like ruined Thanksgiving and Christmas, then had to go to jail for 6 hours, but acts like he was in prison and that it changed his life and that now he's the man and he's hardcore gangster. And he has a tear tattoo that changes which side of his face that it's on, and sometimes he doesn't have it at all. It's just all really funny, really cheesy, crappy bad guy stuff. And the father versus son thing and him like ruining Christmas has like flashbacks of like 90s Maury and Geraldo and Seinfeld type of like crappy reality cheesiness. So it's just so funny. They know exactly what they're doing. And the Rey Dom thing, maybe it's over now. I don't know where the storyline goes from here. But in the match, Rey Mysterio took off his belt and spanked Dom in the corner with his belt. And that was just worth it for me. The whole arc has been such a joy to be a part of, because it's been so cringy at times. It's just so funny and so dumb, and it's just wrestling to me. I loved where that match went. And then finally for night 1, the last match to talk about is Owens and Zayn versus the Bloodline. Huge tag team match, tag team belts. It's the second time ever they've been defended at a main event at WrestleMania. And Owens and Zayn won, which is awesome and great for the storyline, but it's kind of weird to me that they have this whole stable of tag team wrestlers that perform every Monday and every Friday for SmackDown, but those guys don't get to win the belt. Instead, they give it to 2 singles guys. I get it because the singles guys have history. They trained together. They were friends together. They came up together, but they're not a competing tag team. And I think it's kind of crappy to do stuff like that and stiff your tag teams so that 2 other solo guys can be on top. That'll take me to night 2. Night 2 ended with Cody Rhodes losing to Roman Reigns. Again, it's his first time against Roman, but Roman's beaten everybody for like 2.5 years or 3 years, and he has the longest ever championship reign, and it's boring, and his character's boring, and his character's stale. And the only good thing about his character are the other characters supporting him in the back, like the Usos and Paul Heyman. So I'm ready to see this be done. It should have been done. It's really boring that it's still going on. But hey, we'll talk about that in a second. I got some spice to add to that because I have a feeling I know why it's still going on. Night 2 also had a Shane McMahon return.
Oof, man, this was just brutal.
I didn't see that. I didn't watch night 2. That's wild. I didn't know about that.
I'm laughing out loud.
Well, there's a
remembering it.
reason why I think it hasn't been publicized as much because he showed his true McMahon genes. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, he did. He came out. What is he? 58?
Like 51, I think.
52, maybe. Either way, he's not a wrestler, right? He's a CEO. He doesn't compete every week. He's not in shape, and he shouldn't have been here. But here he is, Shane McMahon. The first night they did a surprise match with Pat McAfee and The Miz, where it was kind of just
53.
like Pat McAfee beat The Miz, and it was just kind of more of a comedy bit than a match. It was just like, hey, I'm the host of WrestleMania. Oh no, you put me on the spot. I have to have a match, and The Miz lost. The second night, Snoop Dogg, second host of WrestleMania, did the same thing to him. I'm going to put you on the spot. You're going to have a match. And Miz is doing the, oh, no. And Shane McMahon's music hits. He runs out. And he does like 2 or 3 punches before his entire quad just explodes. And
he did like a leapfrog where he hopped over the Miz. Miz was running under him, and Shane landed on his leg, and just immediately his leg gave out, and because he blew out his quad.
Not even like
which
5
famously
seconds
Vince
into the
McMahon
match.
once blew out both quads simultaneously.
Yeah, I remember that.
When he goes sliding into the ring and blows out both quads.
That's kind of hilarious.
So yeah, like 8 seconds, 5 seconds into the match, his quads blow out, and the ref is like, you can tell the ref is like, hey, don't hit him. Like, I don't know what we're gonna do because this moment is stalled. Well, then Snoop Dogg turns around and just fucking lays the Miz out with a right hand, just decks the Miz, and then hits him again, and then does the worst people's elbow of all time.
Worst.
It was
So
awesome.
bad.
He did the Snoop elbow. It was so doggy. It was out of control. Snoop saved the moment and made it really funny and memorable.
He did. It's kind of amazing. If that was all improvised on his part, he saved the segment in what could have been a disaster.
Yeah, it was just Shane laying there holding his leg like, oh crap, we can't do this bit. And instead Snoop Dogg's like, nah, I got this, check it out.
It was great.
I mean, Snoop has experience with the WWE, right? He's been around.
And he's been around comedians and actors his whole life. Snoop Dogg's not an idiot. The dude can
Snoop
act
Dogg-
and put on a
Snoop Dogg's
show.
great.
And
He
he's
lands
funny.
that elbow, doesn't he? It looks like he lands that elbow into
Bro,
him.
he just puts the elbow straight into him. He didn't try to land on his back or his butt because he knows he's not going to hurt the Miz. So yeah, Snoop jumps all the way up and just goes like elbow straight drive right into Miz's ribs. But like, what's Snoop, like 98 pounds? Like, he's not going to...
No, I think it hurts, to be honest, but he does nail him.
He
Though.
really drilled him with the elbow, dude. Hell yeah. And then let's see, Shane McMahon return. So that's basically it for night 2. The two of the best parts were Roman Reigns being terrible, and then Shane McMahon blowing up his quad. I think were my 2 highlights. Now the reason I think that Roman Reigns is terrible is because WWE sold to Endeavor. And they sold to, or they didn't sell, they're kind of merging. Endeavor's buying 51%. So now that's official. They had this big show in Los Angeles. Endeavor's located in Beverly Hills. So I know they were having those meetings that weekend. I know they're having drinks and having a good time and signing their papers and getting all ready to roll because the news came out Monday. So I think that once that Endeavor deal was penciled in, Vince went right back up to WrestleMania to second night and said, we're going to have Roman retain, we're going to do my storylines, and we're going to do things my way because now it's been bought and I got the money and I'm a CEO again and I'm not relegated to being in the office.
That makes a lot of sense.
And most of that, I've been watching videos and reading some news today about wrestling. Most of that appears to be true. It seems like Triple H has been sort of put back on busy work, and Vince is running the gorilla position again with the headset on in the back. The next night on Raw, Vince had a reappearance. First time he's been on TV since all the sexual allegations and stuff last year. So he brought himself back. He brought his champs back. He buried everybody else. And things are looking bad for the WWE, but great for Vince McMahon's pocketbook.
Yeah, first off, if you see the interviews with Vince from lately, it's hilarious because he's got his hair all dyed dark again and he's rocking like a terrible stash. It's awful. Yeah, from I read some of the same things you were saying, Gary. Like, it sounds like Vince was really head honcho for Raw, and typically the Raw after Mania is historically one of the biggest Raws of the year, and it's a great place for people to return or start new storylines and just do some really cool things. And from reading the Reddit responses and things, like, it was a pretty everybody was pretty down after it, and it seems like even the morale within WWE is now low.
That's right.
Yeah, Vince McMahon's a monster and doesn't need to be doing that. He's
Why would they
awful
have
to work
do
for.
they usually have a Raw after WrestleMania? I would think they would just take the day off.
They always have a
That's
Raw.
what they
at
always
Mania.
do.
That's
They
too
always
much.
do, and it's almost always really cool. Like, the guy
Okay.
that you thought you were going to see at Mania, that you're like, oh man, why didn't I get to see this match? He'll pop out the first thing on Raw, and you'll be like, yes! And since you're still in the city, right, you came in on Friday, and then you watched day 1 of Mania, day 2 of Mania, maybe you watched NXT, but you're still in town, right? So maybe you leave Sunday night, but maybe you stay Monday for Raw. So that's another reason is the people who are already in town, you're going to sell out your tickets because they already traveled halfway across the world. But yeah, usually it's a really big night, and it's a great night. But this past Raw was the Vince McMahon show again, and nobody wanted to see that. Nobody wanted that. Let me talk about the NXT show real quick that came on before Mania, and then I'm done. I just have one match to talk about or two. Stand and Deliver came on that morning, I think 11 a.m. before the first WrestleMania. Braun Breaker had a fantastic championship match. He's the son of Rick Steiner, and he looks more like Scott. He looks like Rick Steiner and Scott Steiner had a baby. He's ripped. He's a great wrestler. He's a hell of an athlete. He's gigantic powerhouse guy that can also do backflips off the top turnbuckle. Braun Breaker just has it all. He's one of those it guys, and so his match was really good. Him and Mello had a match
It's
for the
a
belt.
good name.
Braun Breaker,
It's a
yeah,
good
it is.
name.
There's another wrestler named Braun Strowman, so I'm like, when they bring Braun Breaker up to the main card, are they going to change his name, or are they going to have 2 Brauns on the roster? But we'll find out. I'll let you guys
But
know.
they're
I know
spelled differently.
they are, but pronounced
Maybe
very
he'll
much
just
the same.
suddenly be a weird backwoods serial killer family.
Oh, that's what they did to Way Bryant.
That is, yeah.
Bray Wyatt. So Braun Breaker's match was great, him versus Mello. Mello got the belt, Braun did not retain, so I thought that was going to be the chance to move Braun up to the main card. Maybe we'd see him the Monday after on Raw, but I don't think that's what happened. The other match that was really good was a women's ladder match. It was a fatal 4-way because the champion gave up her belt. She had a really bad mental health break last month and wasn't sure if she was going to stay around or wrestle anymore. So she gave up her belt, vacated it. And then I think she, had time to work on herself and talk about her mental health crisis. And she decided if she was ready to compete, but the belt was already up for the fatal 4-way. So it's a really cool match where, like, outside of the storyline, you're like, I wonder if she'll get it back because it was just a mental health thing. But then also, if you vacate the title, should you get it back or should somebody else win it? So I was really excited just to watch that from a viewer perspective. And Indy Hartwell ended up winning that, and I didn't expect it at all. There were some huge bumps, really violent ladder shots, just a really good ladder match. It's just the women killed it on NXT. And then finally, there was a 5-way North American Championship match that basically had all of NXT's best guys. And they just beat the hell out of each other. An absolute slobber knocker from the 5-way championship match for the North American Championship. So if you're going to go back and watch WrestleMania, if you're interested at all in this year's WrestleMania, you could skip night 2, but watch Stand and Deliver. So watch Stand and Deliver in part 1, and then you'll be caught up on what was really, really great.
See, I spread the love. Y'all let me talk about Oscars. I let Gary have a WWE corner.
There we go. Back to the Oscars.
We're even.
He's trying to segue back to the Oscars.
What do
This
I
is
get to
Drew
talk
and I-
about?
Dungeons
Drew
and
and I-
Dragons. Go back to Dungeons and
Okay,
Dragons.
that's fair. Yeah, yeah, I
I
did
don't
get
know,
to talk.
John.
What-
What do you have to talk about, Jahan?
Zombies.
I was going to say The Wrestler, Drew, for us. The Wrestler is where we come together. That's where you get an Oscar-worthy performance with wrestling.
There you go. Great movie.
Yeah, I also did some stuff. Boom, I watched Emily the Criminal. Aubrey Plaza stars in this Netflix movie where she is a broke, indebted ex-felon kind of person having trouble, with just life in general. It feels very real. Like it doesn't feel too unrealistic. It's real life to the point that it's almost not a movie. I don't know. And then some kind of slightly more outlandish things happen.
What people do are desperate for money. Like when they're desperate to
Yeah.
get, that's what it's about.
It shows. Yeah, she's desperate for money. She does crime. She becomes Emily the Criminal. It's okay. If you like Aubrey Plaza, maybe check it out. It's not. I wasn't like, oh my god, what a great movie. It was fine for a Netflix movie. It was watchable. But I'm not singing its praises. It was okay. Honestly, like she often plays like this cold detached character. It was a little much this time. It was just kind of like she was like anti-acting almost. Like there's just like nothing. There's nothing coming off of her. I was like, man, that's not the best after an hour and a half. But I do love Aubrey Plaza in general.
That ending, I was like, man, ice cold.
Yeah, the ending was cold, and it was fine. It was more or less expected, I guess. There's just this decline in her the whole time. It was fine. Check it out if you want to. I'm not endorsing it. It's fine. The other things I'll talk about, I've talked about this game before, but now it's free on Game Pass, Loop Hero. It is a retro-style roguelike, kind of almost auto-battler, in where your hero runs around almost a Monopoly board that you kind of get to build yourself, trying to piece the world back together after evil has destroyed reality. And you're trying to live again. You're trying to recreate the world by putting these memories back together. It's very fun. It's very addictive. I can sit there and play Loop Hero for hours and hours, so I wanted to put that on people's radar. Last thing I'll talk about, I've been playing a lot of Marvel Snap. And if you play Marvel Snap, the new season, it might have you excited, it might not. The theme itself isn't necessarily the most exciting to me. This is Marvel Snap Animals Assemble. And it's featuring Hitmonkey. He's like the highlight. His powers so-so. But some of the characters that come out later are much more excited for it, like Jeff, the baby land shark, which is more of a recent character, I feel, in the Marvel Comics, but he is a fan favorite. People love him. He's a cute little shark puppy, essentially, that walks on land, but his ability is pretty strong. You can move him once, and nothing can stop him from moving, so he can just be put anywhere. He's very cool. They have a lot of that kind of... They're adding rules. They're starting to add like things that break the established rules. And it's pretty cool. There's another character that's a shapeshifter called Snowguard that changes in your hand. There's Stegron, which is like a dinosaur man. I'm excited for some of them. I've been playing a lot. Marvel Snap has kept it fresh. They've added new ways to get cards for free, which I appreciate. And I've just overall been really enjoying it. So if you haven't at least tried it, it is free. Check it out. Marvel Snap is a fun game. If you're a board game person, it has the feelings of Smash Up, which is a card game, in that you are slamming cards onto bases to try to win the most bases. Very fun. I've been kind of obsessed the past 2 months, so I wanted to share that with the listeners.
Perfect. And as for myself, I've just got a couple things to note. One, I watched the Tetris movie that is now streaming on Apple TV Plus, and I thought it was fine. I thought that that's my takeaway, is that it was fine. I like Taron Egerton a lot, and he's the star of this movie, and he's really kind of the only big name in it, other than maybe Toby Jones has a part in it. But Taron Egerton's able to carry the movie pretty well. And if you're interested in like the crazy story behind the licensing of Tetris, it is kind of interesting dealing with the Russians and so on, but it's 2 hours long. It's probably a little bit too long, and but I think that Taron Egerton proves himself as a star and is able to carry the movie. So that was my big takeaway from it. But I thought it was fine. So that is Tetris. It is on Apple TV Plus. Also, the Tetris music is great, and it lends itself really well to a movie score. Worth noting. And then the other thing, I don't talk as much about the games that I've been playing, but I had a big one that I did want to note, which is the Resident Evil 4 remake that just came out. I have been playing it. I'm not like a diehard Resident Evil fan that grew up playing all the games. When I was young, I got scared easily, and I didn't want to play scary games. But they have been remaking the Resident Evil games recently. 2 and 3 have had full-on remakes, and now 4 is the newest one. And I've played all the remakes, and they are really, really good and a great way to experience these games that I did not play when I was younger. And Resident Evil 4 is great. It is the one that kind of transitions to being a little bit more of an action franchise as opposed to the previous entries, but also has plenty of spookies in it. So I am
Resident
really
Evil 4
enjoying it.
Is one of the best entries in the series.
And a lot of people would consider it one of the best games of all time. Like,
it's
there are
very
people
good.
that love it.
I do believe Resident Evil 4 is the entry into the series that introduced Mercenaries mode, which is like the high score competition mode, and where you get to pick a bunch of different characters and you run around the map trying to get the max score possible by maintaining a kill chain. So it brought that mode into the forefront. It's the one that kind of made that a thing, and it's very fun. I played Resident Evil 4. The first time I ever played it was actually a remake, not or the remaster, not the remake. So I also didn't play the original, but I loved it, man. I'm glad that you're liking it. It's very fun.
A thing that the Resident Evil games do really well that keeps you on your toes the whole time is even the most basic enemies in it, like the grunts more or less. And this is even in 2 or 3, it's kind of like this, but in 4 especially. The most basic enemies still keep you on your toes. Like, I will have chapters of the game where I've killed 50, 60 plus enemies, but even still, anytime you get into combat with one of them, it is intimidating and a little bit scary, and you don't know how, one wrong move on your part could end badly. So I like the fact that even the most basic of enemies can still provide a challenge in the game, and that's what makes the gameplay of it interesting. So yeah, Resident Evil 4 remake, it's been getting rave reviews at all the gaming outlets, and I can confirm it's really good, and it is fun.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's Resident Evil 4.
Go
ahead, John. Sorry, I cut you off.
That's it for us, right?
I'm gonna throw it to Sean. I want to see if Sean.
Oh yeah, Sean. Sean's got stuff.
I do. Maybe let me see.
Sean does a lot of stuff.
Tomorrow, Air hits theaters. That's Ben Affleck directed film where he plays the Nike CEO Phil Knight, and it's about kind of how the Air Jordan came about, the whole big deal with Michael Jordan. And also tomorrow is the Super Mario Brothers movie, which I watched yesterday. Go in as a kid, leave as a kid, and enjoy the movie. That's all I'm going to say about that. Let your inner kid enjoy the Mario movie. And
I like that. I've been seeing some of the reviews that have broken. It seems pretty mixed, and I knew that you were pretty high on it. So
I did. So you can go see my reviews at nerd-tropolis.com for those. But I loved it. I mean, I enjoyed it so much. And if we can, real quick, can we say how awesome the Blue Beetle trailer was, and then the Barbie trailer that came out, and then you had the new Across the Spider-Verse trailer. Like, I'm like overloaded.
We're in kind of this interesting phase now where I feel like, we kind of had March has always been like a mini blockbuster time where, it's like we just had Shazam and Scream and Dungeons and Dragons and all these things. And now I feel like we're kind of in the waiting period for the true summer blockbusters. And so we just got the trailer onslaught now. And it's pretty exciting. A lot to look forward to.
Blue Beetle looks great.
Yeah.
So when they announced that movie, I love Blue Beetle. I was a little, I'm always scared because DC does not have a good track record with me personally. I'm not
everybody.
I didn't want to speak for everybody, but yeah, their movies blow. This one looks solid. This one looks like it's gonna do us proud. The casting's good. Very excited for that one.
I was hopeful that they'd be able to keep this Blue Beetle if the movie did well and maybe use him in the future. And I've still got my fingers crossed. I like Blue Beetle, and I hope they don't just relegate it to nothingness with the Jimmy G swap and everything going on.
I really think he would be a good addition to the mainstream of DC
I did
heroes.
tweet James Gunn and asked him to please keep this Blue Beetle into the new DCU.
I'll tweet him too.
Yeah, everyone just do that. I did that. And then Drew loves Barbie, so let's get Drew on Barbie.
Oh man, the Barbie trailer looks great. It looks so good. It looks so good. I'm a big Greta Gerwig fan, and like I loved Lady Bird, and I loved her Little Women adaptation, and I think she's really talented as a director. So taking on Barbie is a pretty interesting choice. And now seeing the trailers of it, I'm like, oh, she was the perfect choice because they obviously understand the tongue-in-cheek nature of what they're doing and kind of being a self-parody while also being true to the subject matter. I don't know. I think that the vibes of this one look great, and it's bright and colorful and vibrant. I don't know. Everything about it looks really fun. So this little teaser made me.
It looks like it's going to be funny. I wasn't expecting that. It looks like it's supposed to be funny. It doesn't really look like it's supposed to be for kids, honestly.
Well, and I think it is going to have a little bit of like
There's some adult humor.
It's supposed to be PG-13.
Okay.
Is that right? I don't
If
know.
it's gonna be PG, if it's PG-13, they're gonna make a mistake with that because they're gonna turn off, I think, a lot of people with that rating.
We'll see. I think it's going to be interesting. It's coming out against Oppenheimer, which obviously Christopher Nolan is a big blockbuster director, and all his original movies always done well. And Oppenheimer and Barbie come out on the same day. I'm going to be interested to see which one brings in more mass audiences. I hope they don't. I hope that people, I like, why can't we have both, right? I hope
But little girls aren't
going
gonna go watch Oppenheimer, and then
right. And I'm assuming Oppenheimer is going to be.
I feel like children in general are going to want to watch Oppenheimer.
Yeah, is Oppenheimer going to be an R-rated drama? Like, I don't know. It has a huge mega cast. Christopher Nolan brings in people on name alone, but Barbie is Barbie. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting box office weekend.
Yeah, and then the Spider-Verse trailer that came out kind of shows that it's not kind of going the traditional route when it comes to villains. Did y'all watch the trailer?
I did.
Where it kind of shows like Spider-Man 2099 is like, and all the other Spider people are chasing after him to
He
kind of
seems the
stop.
antagonist, and then like he sicked. Yeah, I was really excited to see Ben Reilly's Scarlet Spider depicted. It makes me excited to see what other versions they're going to show.
And they name drop Tom Holland's Spider-Man in there, the Earth 616, because they said it's like Earth 19999, which is the MCU version. So, because they name dropped Doctor Strange too, it's like that whole mess with Doctor Strange and Spider-Man.
Oh, that's funny.
They mentioned that, so it seems like, I don't know, the multiverse obviously plays a big role of something that Miles does that could affect something else. I don't know. It looks pretty good, and you got the Spot. The Spot's the only real villain I saw that's in the movie, but they might get more.
What are you, some kind of Dalmatian?
So I'm excited for that.
If it's anywhere close to the first one, it'll be a must-watch.
Will be much better, especially graphics-wise, because they said each world, Earth, whatever you want to call it, has a different art form. So that's exciting to see, and they said there's dozens of different types of art styles you'll see in the movie, which is super cool.
I'm all in on this Spider-Verse movie, and Blue Beetle, and Barbie. I want to see that one too. That one looks good.
Yeah, I'm looking at release calendar. Like, obviously, the big releases this week are Air and the Super Mario Brothers movie, but I feel like after that, does it kind of slow down a little bit? Then we get Renfield.
Slow down in April a little bit.
Yeah.
Renfield.
Evil Dead Rise and Beau is Afraid are both ones that I'm really looking forward to.
See, I have a list
the next big blockbuster is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 in May. So
I have a quick little rundown what's out this month because I do that every month. But you have Paint, The Pope's Exorcist, Renfield, and then you go to on Netflix. You do that Mighty Morphin kind of special. That's pretty cool. I'm excited for that. Quasi, which is that Broken Lizard movie, I just watched that today. I'll hold on to my thoughts on that. Like you said, Evil Dead Rise, Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, and then Ray Romano's Somewhere in Queens, and then the big George Foreman movie, and then Peter Pan and Wendy on Disney Plus, and then that movie Sisu, that like Denmark movie.
Sisu looks kind of cool. I saw a trailer for it the other day when I was at it. I can't remember what I was seeing, and I saw a trailer.
It's wild.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some good stuff coming.
I can't wait.
What'd you say?
Evil Dead. I can't wait.
I'm hearing
The
great
Pope's
things.
Exorcist was all over WrestleMania, and it was cracking me up, like all over it.
Oh, will have passes to anyone that wants to see Evil Dead Rise in Houston next Thursday, I believe. So I just got the link. I will send it to y'all, and I'll shoot it out to everyone else.
Awesome.
Did you say
Sorry,
next
Gary.
week?
I think it's next week, next Thursday.
I might actually be available for once.
I'll double check the
Oh,
date. But I
that's
think
funny timing. That's actually
is funny
during our
timing.
off week.
Yeah, we're ending a show and we're starting another one. We're taking a break in between, so I might actually be free that Thursday for like the only time. I might hit you up for that. Hey, everybody. Hi, this has been Fresh Out the Box featuring the bear of Nerdtropolis himself, John Tajapur. So yeah, the only podcast with two Iranians that's not going to be taken down by the CIA. Hey, I've been Johanan at RockFactor Twitter.
It's me, Casualty CDG, and you can find me at Casualty CDG across all the social media platforms. If you like tabletop role-playing games, D&D, or things like D&D, you should check out Jahan and I's other show. It's called Fresh Out the Box. Every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we play games or paint miniatures or talk about nerdy stuff. Just come check us out, being funny or not funny at Fresh Out the Box. Thank you so much for being here, and tell your friends to smell our podcast.
I am Drew Munhausen at Drew Munhausen on Twitter. And Sean, I know we've been shutting out Nerdtropolis, but where can people find you?
just go to nerd-tropolis.com for all your movie news, reviews, interviews, and trailers.
Perfect. This has been episode 81?
81.
Fresh Out the Podcast? 81. Stay fresh.
Thanks, everybody. Stay fresh.